the late 90s. Since the late 90s. I've seen quite an evolution, especially over the last few years with the pandemic. As Shonda mentioned, I actually gave a version of this at DevLearn in October. I've enhanced it a little bit more for today as well. And a couple of reminders with my producer hat on. If you have any questions, please put that in the Q&A if you could. That helps because we do have a large group. And if you're using chat, because I do want this to be an interactive session, everybody's like sort of in a different place now with their online learning. Please share and collaborate with each other. And if you're using chat today, make sure you change that chat to everyone. By default, I think it only goes to hosts and panelists. So if you haven't done that right now, open up your chat and change that to everyone if you would like everyone to see your wonderful contributions. And you might have just heard the session is being recorded. So this is You've Gone to Virtual Delivery. Now what? It's been really chaotic. As Shonda mentioned, I was the person behind the scenes with TOC even before the pandemic hit. So back in 2018, 2019, and then into the pandemic as well. And you can imagine I was pretty busy during 2020 and with some government organizations as well, because everybody had to pivot so quickly in 2020. And we didn't really have an opportunity for many organizations to do it maybe the right way. And I chose this theme of this beach theme because and when I was trying to look for images for this, this just really resonated for me because I felt like we were building sand castles. And I don't know about you, I'm not the best at building sand castles, and I see these really elaborate sand castles. So I hope you enjoy this theme, but I want this, this presentation isn't going to be about me giving you all the answers. It's really food for thought. So if your organization has gone to virtual delivery, what can you now start thinking about as you move forward? And I'm going to actually turn off my camera until the end when we have questions, or I might bring it back on as I answer questions. But again, remember to put any questions in that Q&A. Let me stop my video there. So this was, even before the pandemic, my favorite saying to hear. I'm being very facetious. Can't we just take the PowerPoint slides that we already have, and we have MS Teams or we have Zoom or whatever platform you have, and just take the same material and teach it the same way? Can't we just? And I would always say, no, you can't just. There's actually a lot that surrounds even one event that you need to consider. And this can't we just got really amplified in 2020. Can't we just take this pile of sand and make this beautiful, detailed sandcastle? Isn't that how it works? I mean, I've never built a sandcastle, but isn't this, in my mind, how my sandcastle would look the first time I tried this? And if you want to put in chat, or if you want to give like a fun emoji of how that really went for you, you are welcome to share that. Love to hear from you. But no, we can't just. And really what's happened over the last few years has been this sort of evolution of, okay, we had instructor-led training. A lot of us were doing this face-to-face, maybe doing a little bit of virtual. Then we had to go 100% virtual. And now what we're seeing is this hybrid. And I'm going to touch a little bit more on hybrid and blend as we move through this presentation today. Hybrid being kind of a combination of some people are in the office and some people are not in the office. But what you're going to hear in this theme today is these definitions are evolving over the last couple of years and are going to continue to evolve. So just with a show of hands, how many of you are doing a hybrid now or thinking about doing a hybrid? Click that raise hand button. It's going up fast. Hybrid being some people are in the office, some people are at home, and they're all learning at the same time. In a synchronous, but in a hybrid synchronous. Great, yeah. So about 20 of you. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about this and sort of the challenges of what's going on there. Thank you for sharing. So I feel like this is really what we're feeling like now. If you remember our really fancy sandcastle that we were thinking we could do with our pile of sand, this is probably more what a lot of us were feeling like the last few years. The water's coming in, it's taking out our sandcastles. We keep rebuilding them really, really quickly. And now we have some Zoom fatigue, as you're hearing that saying. Our training feels disjointed. Our materials are kind of a mess because we just had to hodgepodge them together really quick. And to be honest, a lot of the training, online training, has plateaued. As is maybe our sandcastle building has plateaued. So in literal terms, delivery efforts are feeling stalled or unengaging. Again, with a show of hand, how many of you are feeling this way? Like you just can't keep your sandcastles going. Go ahead and give a show of hands. So a few of you. A lot, I got to seeing a lot of floating thumbs up. Yeah. So now what? Where do we go from here? And to be honest, I think this is a very exciting time for online training. This pandemic really offered and still offers an opportunity for online learning to evolve. Okay, not only um, not only did existing platforms, so let's say like Zoom and MS Teams and WebEx, those existing platforms had to really up their game the last few years. And these are tools, some of these tools like Zoom and MS Teams were not initially built for training. They were built to be meetings, meeting applications. And I mean, I don't know how many of you wish you had had Zoom stock, hindsight being 2020, right? Um, but these tools have been greatly enhanced, and new and exciting types of virtual classrooms and online tools are being deployed to enhance the learning experience. When you finish this session today, I'm going to show you a few of them, but I invite you to go to the Google machine or your DuckDuckGo and just type in virtual collaboration tools and see some of the really great stuff that is coming out. And we're going to look at a couple of those things and talk about more of the now what. Now what could mean things like, what does it mean to be hybrid or more blended, or all that VILT that you had to develop? Does it have to go back to ILT? Is it more VILT? VILT being virtual instructor-led training. But does that VILT need to be better, better engaging, better logistics, better upskilling? So again, the session's not about giving you all the answers, but food for thought and a way to start a discussion in your organization or with your colleagues. Because I really believe virtual delivery is rapidly evolving, and it's a really fun time. So my first bit to think about is think outside the bucket. The bucket being the way you currently use your virtual classroom or currently deliver online. And when I say virtual classroom, I mean the platforms like Zoom, MS Teams, WebEx, Adobe Connect. And most organizations use these platforms in a very traditional learning fashion, right? The facilitator and the participants are utilizing the tools such as chat and polling and annotation that are within the platform, and they're delivering in a traditional method using traditional materials like PowerPoint, which is what you're seeing here, right? So how can we think outside the bucket a bit to enhance these experiences? So let's look at blending. This is one of those terms that is not new in the learning industry if you've been around quite a while. I'd love to hear from you in chat. What does blended learning mean to you? When you hear the term blended learning, what does that mean to you? Go ahead and type that in chat. Remember, you want to make sure your chat is going to everyone. I'm seeing Collins and my sandcastle's always falling down. Yes. What is blended? When you hear the term blended learning, what does that mean to you? In person and virtual, online and in person, yep, multiple delivery. Pamela says hybrid, which I think is, again, these words are evolving, and we'll talk a little bit more about hybrid in a bit too. But now, yes, people are using the term hybrid for blended, which in the past, to me, the word blended and hybrid were very distinctly different. But now they're meshing. So perfect. You all are wonderful. Yeah, and the most simplistic definition is a blend of asynchronous and synchronous learning. Asynchronous being anything from discussion boards to e-learning, synchronous being either face-to-face live or virtual like we're doing today. So blending is not new. This is not a new concept, right? But how we blend is changing. And one type of blend is a blend of technologies. Again, not a new concept using multiple types of technology, but when you look in the context of synchronous virtual delivery, what can we blend? And one example here is if you have Zoom and you're using Zoom, you could use a digital whiteboard such as Mural. So how many of you are familiar with Mural or Miro, M-I-R-O? Mural or Miro? You can give me a thumbs up or a hand raise. I see one hand raise, a couple thumbs up. These tools, so Mural is an online whiteboard, and you might think, well, okay, I can whiteboard in Zoom and I can whiteboard sort of, not really, not great in MS Teams or in Adobe Connect and WebEx, but this really takes the experience to the next level. And you can have Zoom plus a Mural whiteboard. And I'm going to show you an example of this. And in fact, I just did this. I had an online or a full day session at DevLearn, where this is an activity that came from that session. I was so proud of one of the tables using this because I had everybody logged in online, and then the activity in Zoom. So this on the left is the slide I was showing in the virtual space. I wanted them to think through a course structure and, what would they do for their pre and post activities? What would they do for their live sessions or in between? They were building a virtual program, but I wanted them to capture their ideas on a mural board. Now the mural board was outside of Zoom. So granted, I had to give them a separate link. I had to set up that mural board separately, but they would go and open up that mural board. And I had on that board, within the same board, right, an assignment for each table. And then I put them in, if I was in a virtual classroom, I'd put them into breakout rooms, but only so they had the audio part of the breakout, right? So then they would be collaborating on the mural board, and everybody, you can have a lot of fun. You can put images in there, you can put videos in there, you can add, I seeded it with some of the stuff, and then they just went to town with these little icons. And the whole idea is they collaborated in this board. I could watch the whole board. So what you don't see here is table 3 is one section of the entire board. And I could watch all of the tables at once on this board. I could pop from room to room in Zoom, see how they're doing, but I could see right there without popping around from room to room. And then when we came back to the main room, I would just share my screen and say, okay, table 3, I'm going to bring up your board. Or I could say, everybody go look at the board on the mural. So this is just one example of a way to use a different technology with maybe with a platform that you're already using. Yeah, Colin says we can't use the whiteboard in Teams, right? Yeah, especially the government organizations. I know for a lot of you, maybe you're a little locked down and Mural might be a bit of a pipe dream, but you never know. You never know. It's just to give you some food for thought again. The other great thing about this is then I could print this out and then turn it into a job aid if I wanted to. And I promise I don't work for Mural or Miro, but there is a lot of templates in there, so you wouldn't have to start from scratch. They have a lot of training templates. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. But this is just an idea of what different technologies can you use to enhance the platforms that you have now. Another one is a polling feature. Now, granted, in a lot of these platforms, you have polls. They're pretty standard, but this is one called Mentimeter, or for short, people call it Menti, or you might have Poll Anywhere. There's several of them out there, and this will enhance your presentation as well. How many of you are familiar with the Mentimeter? If you want to, yeah, Shanda says she uses Menti a lot. It's pretty intuitive. It's really easy to use. You can get a free version, a limited free version of this as well. It can enhance you. What's interesting about Menti is you can actually use this as a standalone. You don't have to be in Zoom. What I'm showing you here, though, is it integrated into Zoom. If you do use Zoom, you can integrate a lot of different apps. You can just go to their site and it'll tell you all the apps that you can integrate. But the problem with this is, and I did have a session where the presenters unfortunately told me they wanted to do this like the day before, and it was 2 pages of instructions of what the participants would have to do in order to integrate this, because they had to go into their own Zoom account, integrate the app. I mean, I'm truncating the instructions. I had to do it too, and I had to say, well, you should have told me this a week ahead of time, because there's no way on a free webinar I'm going to get people to do these 2 pages of instructions to integrate this app. So that's just a little piece of, when you think about integrating the logistics that might be involved with these. So the previous examples were about enhancing the experience with new tools, but also consider ways that you can repurpose the tools that you do have. So for example, how else can you use your current virtual classroom? I'm going to give a couple of examples here. Oop. Could you create some micro learnings? So again, micro learning is not a new concept, but a lot of people feel challenged on how to make these micro learnings. They think they need special tools like video software and editing and recording and all of that, but you've got a virtual classroom at your fingertips, and it's so easy to make a recording. I just did one recently where I didn't need all the bells and whistles. I just got on, I started sharing my screen, and I made a recording, and I could do some simple editing if I needed to. I saw a really great session at DevLearn by Josh Cavalier. If you're not familiar with him, I'll type his name in chat. You can look him up. He is really known for doing really great videos and video editing, but he did a really great session that got me thinking on taking a video, like one video, let's say you have an hour long or a 30-minute one, and making derivative assets from that one video. And he was talking about how could you take this one video and, let's say, extract or take a screen grab of an image that was in the video. So now you've made an image, you've made a JPEG image, and now you can take that image and put it into a job aid. Or you can take the transcript. I don't know if you noticed, but we have closed captioning on. If you didn't notice, you can hit that little CC at the bottom on your Zoom system tray, and it'll put the closed captioning showing, which does an automatic transcript. A lot of these platforms are offering that for free now. Could you take that transcript and then easily turn that into a job aid after you've done this recording? And now you've got not only one big recording, but you've got these easily made derivative assets that can be micro learnings, or they could be booster activities. Yes, transcript is really important for 508 compliance. Absolutely. And then with booster activities, I'm talking about instead of these hour-long or 30-minute long virtual instructor-led trainings or 2-hour longs, everybody is a lot more savvy now getting online and getting into these virtual classrooms than they were a few years ago. Could you now do these little booster activities that are maybe 10 minutes long, 5 minutes long, because there's not as much storming and norming, because that usually would what eat up a lot of the beginning of your training. So again, it's about how can you reinvent or repurpose how you're using your virtual classrooms. Could you have virtual office hours now, or lunch and learns? Again, if you go to the Google machine or DuckDuckGo or whatever it is you use, and you type in virtual collaboration activities, there is so much out there on how you can use your virtual classroom to collaborate. And I encourage you to look that up. Let me ask all of you is, how have you, if you have, repurposed using your virtual classroom, or how has using your virtual classroom evolved over the last few years versus just everybody showing up and just doing a traditional training? How has your virtual or use of your virtual classroom evolved? If you want to type that in chat, you can say it hasn't as well. That's fine. That's why we're here. Nice, Deanna. Micro learnings, you're doing that already. Lunch and Learns, guest speakers. More interactivity in the meetings, yes. You're trying more breakout rooms. Yeah, because they're becoming more savvy too. Like I used to advocate, hey, if don't go and do breakouts right at the beginning of a training because there's so much storming and norming. People don't understand what's going on. There's all this instruction, da 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 da. But again, people are more savvy, and now I would advocate it because they're more comfortable with the platform. So now you could just say, okay, we're going right into breakout rooms. This is what's going to happen. Yeah, thank you. Yep, Dwayne. Using no PowerPoints. Yeah, I would advocate that as well. I know I'm using one here today, but or trying to minimize it. Well, thank you all for sharing. So what other tools are out there that you can deploy instead of a typical virtual classroom like Zoom? What's out there? We're talking virtual online delivery. Do we have to be so constrained by these tools and platforms? You might want to go and look at what is available externally or internally to your organization. So I mentioned Mural and Menti earlier in the context of blending with your virtual classroom, but you can also use these in a standalone. Mural now, and its equivalent Miro, which is a little more advanced than Mural, but Mural is catching up, has the ability, you don't need a separate virtual classroom. You can do everything just on Mural, including calling in, including doing breakouts, which is really nice. Yep, Slido is a great one, Poll Everywhere. Yeah, please continue to put those into chat, things that you're using. Google Docs. I think Google Docs gets overlooked. It's a good collaboration tool that you don't necessarily need to have Zoom to use. So I encourage you to, again, think outside that bucket and what else is out there that you can bring within the organization to try out and not be so constrained to just the virtual classroom. Just as a side note, my dog is not, this is not my dog being all active. This is my dog. She's more of the lazy get in the lake, even though I don't want her to get wet. Walker. Her name's Ivy. I said Miro, Miro is the other one. So what new ways can you blend? So the word blend, I brought it up earlier, you gave me a definition, but the word blend and the word hybrid are really evolving right now. And again, it's not a new concept, but now you have to think about what does that blend mean for you? And I showed a couple of examples from a technology perspective. Is it async and sync and hybrid? Is it some sort of collaboration tool and VILT and hybrid? It's an opportunity to kind of rethink your programs. And with that, let's talk hybrid. Someone mentioned hybrid in chat when I asked, how do you define blend? And I mentioned that maybe before last year, I distinctly defined these two things very differently. Blend was asynchronous and synchronous training, put together from a design perspective. And hybrid to me was really about, you got some people in the classroom face-to-face and you've got some people online. But now we're talking about the new blend of hybrid, where it's kind of all of the above. So how would you describe hybrid learning now? How would you describe hybrid learning? If someone were to say, we're going to do some hybrid learning, and you went, great. What does that mean? You can go ahead and type that in chat. Mary, yes, complicated. Yeah, mix of in-person and remote, mix of apps, lots of logistics. For those, the handful of folks that raised your hand that you're doing hybrid, you know the pain points. This comic, please continue to answer in chat, but this comic that you're seeing on the screen, I actually built this comic in like 08 or 09, almost, when are we, 20, 14 years? I can't do math, 14, 15 years ago, I built this comic, which was prevalent then. And ironically enough, I think it's even more prevalent now. And for those that are, putting in chat just the pain points of hybrid, if you haven't gone through this, there is a lot to think about. And I'm not going to dig deep into that today. That's not what this session is about. But part of your discussion with Now What is likely going to be like, how do we make hybrid work for us? What does that look like? What does the new blend look like? What do we need to consider with the hybrid? Because there is a lot of logistics involved, as mentioned, and this definition is evolving and will be continuing to evolve. And it's going to be tricky. And I'm going to share some stories here in a little bit, and we'll touch on hybrid a little bit more as we go through this. So part of your now what is, can you step back? Maybe you have a little breathing room now, right? We all pivoted so quickly in the last, in 2020. We scrambled a little bit more in 21. Things maybe settled down a little bit last year. So now do you have the opportunity to step back and think about rebuilding, reskilling, and doing it better, it being online delivery? And one way to do this is maybe go back to your foundation. So you've dug all these holes to build your sandcastles, and your holes are filling up with water. Now it's time to maybe fill in those holes back with sand and look at your program from a foundational perspective, and look at it from instructional design. So again, when we pivoted, I think people were just slapping things together, doing the best that they can. Can you step back and go, oh, did we actually design this in a really solid, instructionally sound way? Can we go back and look at our delivery, and what best practices can we go back now and institute? And one piece I also, because I'm dealing with this in the organization that I'm working in now, is can we look at some new adaptable templates and standards? And when I say adaptable, I mean, if we're designing now in this hybrid, right? So, oh, I have some classes that are ILT, and I have some classes that are VILT, and I have some classes that are a mix of the two. Does that mean I have to have 3 different decks or 3 different sets of materials in order to support these 3 different modalities? And we're having that problem, we're having that challenge in the organization that I'm in now. So what does that look like to make new templates and standards so you aren't having to recreate multiple versions for each delivery modality? So in the description for this, I did promise the 6 guiding principles of virtual delivery. I think this is a good spot to do it. Before I do that, I just want to see if there's any questions. Oh, Chris had a question about Mural, which I'll answer real quick. Did you need to organize groups in Mural? I did organize the groups in the sense that I told them which table in the Mural that I wanted them to go to, if that's what you're asking. So in Mural, it was already labeled. And then in the virtual classroom, I said, okay, you're table 3. So I want you to go over to that space in Mural that says table 3. Let me know if that really answers your question, Chris, and I'm happy to kind of circle back to that as well. So the 6 guiding principles, I've been talking about these 6 guiding principles. Maybe you've heard me before, and it might be a little bit of a repeat, but I hope it's either it could be validation if it is a repeat that you're doing it right. Two, I used to really focus as far as virtual instructor-led training, but these are really relevant for hybrid as well as we go through these. And this is part of going back to, um, can you step back and look at your foundation? Yeah, sorry, ILT instructor-led training, VILT virtual instructor-led training. Thanks for that question, Priscilla, or sorry, Patricia. 6 guiding principles. So designed to make sure you get regular feedback. And these are just a couple of examples of polling and raising hands. And I've been having you do that in the session today. You see that in a lot of the platforms. They're pretty standard, but you want to design in a way that you are building in that feedback. And when I say feedback, I mean, I know that you are checked in in some way. I mean, I hear a lot of different numbers over the years, oh, every 3 to 5 minutes, every 5 to 7 minutes. You kind of have to decide on your training. But some examples here is to set the expectation of engagement. So at the very beginning of my presentation, I did a little bit of housekeeping and let you know, please post questions. I set that level of engagement of, hey, I want to hear from you. I want you to collaborate with each other. And this is how we're going to do it. This will be really important for hybrid learning if you find yourself in that delivery modality. On how are people going to engage? Because it's a lot trickier when you've got some people sitting around a table in a classroom together and then people sprinkled on their computers other places. So how are they going to set that expectation of engagement? And if you're going to have them use the tools, get the participants to use the tools early so they know which tools you want them to use. So I had you using chat really early in this. Again, if you in a hybrid situation and people are going to be asking questions face to face, how is the facilitator handling the face to face questions versus the ones that are, coming in online? What ways might you engage participants in a virtual environment? If you want to go ahead and type in chat, what ways do you like to engage participants in a virtual environment? Polls. Turn on the cameras, okay? I have some sessions where I have to webcam or not to webcam debates. Competition, small group activities. Yeah, a lot of great ways, even chat. As simple as chat. I'm doing that with you here today. We're doing chat and we're collaborating with each other. How about in a hybrid environment? What does that look like in a hybrid environment? Engaging everyone. It's a little bit trickier. Q&A. It's a delicate dance. Yes. I love that one. Is it Malia? Pair a virtual person with a person in the classroom. Yes. Partner. Yep. Same. Chris said that as well. So this is food for thought. If you're moving towards that hybrid or you find yourself in that, you're going to have to think differently on how you're going to engage. I always love asking this question, what what ways might you engage a participant? Because and mostly the answers are polls and chat, and yes, those can be engaging. The number one question I always get is, how do I know my participants are engaged, at least especially in a virtual? And I kind of give the answer, you don't always know that they're engaged, even if you're doing a poll, even if you're asking them to type in chat. Engagement is really relative. And that's why the design is so important in finding different ways to engage them. Yes, make use of smartphones. A few years ago, I'm not sure we could have done that, but now, yeah, in fact, Mentimeter, you can use the Mentimeter. I like it better when you give them a QR code and they open it up on their smartphone and then you show the results on the screen. And most people, again, much savvier now a few years later than we were before. So it's easier to do that. Second guiding principle, what you rely on will work differently. What do you think I mean by that? What you rely on will work differently when you're delivering online or even in a hybrid. What you rely on will work differently. What do you think that means? What you relied on in the face-to-face is going to work differently in the virtual and hybrid environments. Response times are different. Rapid change in technology. Yeah, especially right now. Oof. Room energy, accessibility. Oh, we could do a whole hour on accessibility, Colin, for sure. Impossible to keep up. Think outside the bucket. Thanks, Patricia. Yeah, you can't see people. You can't read their body language. You don't know the energy of the room. So this is a really popular, go around the room and introduce yourself. I mean, we've all done it. We've been doing it since we were kids. Go around the room. What's your name? What's your position? Where are you located? What's one thing you want to get out of the class? What's one interesting fact about yourself? And you can do that relatively quick in a face-to-face, which is why we do it. However, imagine you're in a hybrid or in your virtual delivery, introductions can be really cumbersome, really cumbersome. Turn on your webcam and come on mic and can you hear me now? Can you see me now? They can take often twice as long to do introductions around the room. And then if you have a hybrid and you're working with technology, as well, who's going first? The people in the room going first or the people online going first? I personally like doing introductions where I just have everybody introduce themselves in chat. Maybe they do that while they're logging on or just in the first couple of minutes. This is one thing, because this is the one thing, if you've got an hour session, this could eat up the first 10 minutes of your hour, just like that, very easily. So this is a simple example of, of this, what you rely on will work differently, and you have to think differently when you are designing. Everything requires instructions and setup. Oh boy, if you're doing hybrid, that's for sure, because can the people online hear the people in the room and vice versa? How are the webcams showing up on the screen? So everything requires instructions. And if you're not doing hybrid and you're doing virtual, and but it sounds like this group has done quite a bit of virtual, you're probably already learning this and maybe there's some validation. But this is an example that I always like to show. I did this with the now called Learning Guild. And I was the producer. You kind of see my name there up on the top left. And I was working with Stephanie Harnett. She was doing some examples of storyline. And we had to do some preparation where she wanted people to click on a link, go watch a sample of a storyline, come back and type in chat. These are chat boxes here. You know, their impression of watching that video. So, but there's a lot of instruction here is what I want to point out. So she and I met before and we practiced this. She was verbally giving instructions while I was typing instructions in chat as her producer. And so it took a lot, a lot of instructions verbally to get people to do this, but it went off really well. It went off so well that people actually took the time to go and watch both of those videos. So this is another example, a little bit of, well, of two things here. The other thing will be next, but giving instructions. And this is a breakout activity. This is a participant guide from a breakout activity. If you've ever built participant guides, I highly encourage you doing them if you've got new facilitators for online. So this is one of those things you can, if you didn't have the chance to do this when you were burning and churning and pivoting so quickly, here's an opportunity to go back and look at these participant guides and where can you give a little more support to your facilitators. So on that top left corner was what they would see on the screen. And I would be, if I was facilitating, I'd be giving the instructions. And here's all of the instructions that would go along with this breakout activity. Now, again, if your participants are becoming more savvy with breakouts, you might not have to, say all this stuff now, like your audio will follow you into your room, please start sharing your screen. But there's still more instructions than you have to give, for a breakout than you would in a classroom where you can just say, turn to your neighbor and, right, turn to your neighbor and then again, if you're in a hybrid, what does the debrief look like? That'll be different as well. So everything requires instructions and setup. Next is scripting is more important than ever. What you say, how you say, when you say it. Here's an example here on the right-hand side. Please use your status indicator center at the top of your screen where it looks like a person raising their hand. Click the drop-down arrow. So if your participants are new to the platform or you're trying something new, let's say, oh, I'm trying Zoom and Mural, but my participants have never been in Mural before. My facilitator's never been in Mural before. What exactly does that mean? You're going to have to go back and look at your support materials again and see, okay, what instructions do I need to give verbally in a script? What instructions do I need to give physically in a job aid in order to make sure that my participants, as well as my facilitators who often get overlooked, feel supported and will be successful in the environment. And along with that, we're talking, visual and verbal cues together. You might have seen in some of my slides where I had written, please type in chat. Please, I didn't do please raise your hand. But again, if they're new, then you'll want to put these back into your materials. Just some visual best practices, control display with simple animations. You seeing me do that today with my builds. This is really important, especially if you have, like, let's say you're adapting your materials or going back, remember rebuilding that foundation. And if you have slides that have a lot of stuff on them that come up at once, think about an e-learning, I always think VILT design, visual design and e-learning are very similar. You don't want all this information to come onto the screen at once. It's a cognitive overload. And because they're not just looking at their screen or maybe the PowerPoint or the deck or whatever it is you want them to look at, they're also doing Q&A and they're also doing chat and they're also doing webcams. There's so much going on that if you control the display or even use your annotation tools to show them where it is at any given time, it's going to keep that engagement. You want something moving probably at least every 3 to 5 minutes. I've been in presentations as the producer and I'll see, people ping me in chat and go, have they changed their slides? Like, we've been on the same slide for 15 minutes. They've just been talking, but is my computer still working? I have to say, no, your computer is working. You just hasn't changed the slide. So people do get worried. So change the screen frequently and use annotation tools. Limit the on-screen text. Hopefully you've seen that in my presentation today. I'm using a lot more visuals. If you had a lot of text on your screen, move it off of your screen and put it into your script instead. Use relevant images. And if you can, even if it's just at the beginning or even if it's just in a housekeeping slide, include the tools, maybe an image of the tools and what you want them to do. Oftentimes, if I have a question and it's a prepared question, I will write that question on the screen. You saw that earlier. I might also type it in chat, or if I had a producer, have the producer type it in chat. So they're seeing and hearing it 3 different ways when you're in this environment. Because again, we are competing with people's attentions, and it's very easy for someone not to hear or understand the question, and then you get crickets. I'm going to stop here and see if there's any questions coming in. Oh, okay, that was Chris following up about the mural board, and I'll circle back with that as well. Again, if you have any questions or comments or you want to share your own experiences along the way, please put the questions in Q&A or put your experiences in chat. You appreciate the visual best practices. Yeah, I am. It's so important because if you have too much or your visuals are not good, you want to talk about someone quickly disengaging from you, and that's one way. Oh, where do I get my issues concerning the copyright issues? Yeah, well, there's a lot of free places that you can get them. Pixabay is a really great place to go get free. You don't have to worry about the copyright issues. I will say that I've bought them off Shutterstock, so I own a lot of them. So there's not copyright issues, and the organization I work with owns them, and they're okay with me using them. But yes, good point. You should always look out for copyright. You can always put in your slides somewhere where you got, you can attribute the images that way too. Let's see. Dina says, I like to ask folks to share their name and answer the following. If you were your own smartphone, what percentage are you at this morning? Yeah, that's a great one, Dina. Thank you for sharing. Can you say before or after coffee? Okay. So these are some visual best practices. This is just an example I'm going to show here. This actually was something that I got from a client. This was the slide. Benefits of virtual teams. It was just PowerPoints. Bullet points. Let me ask all of you, how would you adapt this slide for virtual delivery? I know it says click raise hand. That's an old, I don't think you can raise hand here to talk, but type in chat. How would you adapt the slide for virtual delivery based on the best practices that I just shared? Yeah, Canva. I've used Canva a lot too to build stuff. Use a bullet and photograph, more image, less text. Make it less wordy. Graphics. Yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of text going on here, and the slide's not even built. So even if I was doing death by bullet point and I had to keep this, I would at least build it so each bullet point came up and I could talk to it a little bit more. This is how I would redesign this one. I turn it into an activity, first of all, and ask, what are the benefits of a virtual team? Type in chat. I mean, it's a very visually simple slide. This is the icon. Like anytime this icon came up, you knew we were going to have a chat that I want you to tap in chat. It's a nice open-ended question. I could do a whole segment on how to ask questions in the virtual classroom too. You want to stay away from closed answered questions. You want open questions. What are some benefits of a virtual team? Well, I'd let them type in chat, and then I might show some benefits based on, and then talk to. I mean, it's just nice, nice simple bullets. I'm not totally anti-bullet point. I do still think they have a function, but now it's not so wordy, and all those sentences I had 2 slides before now become my talking points, and I've made it a lot more fluid for online delivery. Okay, so last one, our last guiding principle, and keeping an eye on time here. Time online is different than time face-to-face. What do I mean by that? Time online is different than time face-to-face. We've alluded to it a little bit here. I've alluded a little bit to it. Some folks said some stuff in chat earlier. Time online is different than time face-to-face. What does that mean? Perception of time. I mean, time is an illusion, but besides that, oh, face-to-face feels like it drags on. More distractions. Oh, I like that one, Patricia. We tend to start and stop on time when we're online. That is true. Screen fatigue is very real. Zoom fatigue is more exhausting online. We need to be more creative. Yes. Oh, you think okay, Pamela, people are more engaged with each other in person? I don't know. I could counter that, but I hear you. Virtual time shorter than in-person time. I like that one, Carla. Online seems to have better planning for the time. I think because we have to, right? Because especially if you're facilitating and you know all these little things could pop up. Troubleshooting might have to happen. You have to wait for things longer. Yeah. How you design is going to be different. Harder to gauge interest. Yep. These are fantastic. I love all of these are so valid. I gave the the example earlier of, go around the room and introduce yourself. I also give the example of, here are all the instructions that you'd have to give for a breakout group. So you all are already on it, but for those who maybe aren't doing a lot of that, and small group activities, what could have been like a 5 to 10-minute activity, turn to your neighbor or at your table, discuss the pros and cons of adapting, use flip chart paper, take 5 minutes to discuss. It gives, I can give instructions in probably less than a minute to 30 seconds. Give them 5 minutes. There's no storming and norming. We can have the activity done pretty shortly. But if I wanted to do that same activity online, if I'm doing breakout groups, let's say they're assigned breakout groups, I gotta, behind the scenes, I gotta set up those assignments in the breakout. So there's setup time, there's the actual time. So setup time, giving, all the instructions of what I want them to do, depending on the activity itself. You can make breakouts really super simple and say, I'm putting you into breakouts randomly. Here's your discussion, go. To more complex, where I'm assigning, I'm going to put you in. I want somebody to start a whiteboard. I want you to type on this whiteboard. I want you to put your thoughts, make sure before you leave the room that somebody in your room has saved the whiteboard, because in Zoom, I can't pull that whiteboard into the main room. Then you're back in the main room and you have to have someone share their whiteboard. Whew, it's like, so it can be really simple to complex, and there can be a lot of logistics. And so that simple 10-minute activity of talk to your table mates could easily double in time and become 20 minutes. So this is one of the things I'm thinking of when I say, well, time online is different than time face to face. Along with all the wonderful things that all of you put into chat. Yeah, visually taking people on the journey as to what to expect is very, very important, because again, we're vying for their attention. So that time, like that example, all ties into all the other 5 guiding principles. I'm giving verbal instructions. I've scripted it out. I'm giving visual instructions. I'm giving them the opportunity to give real-time feedback so that I know that they understand what it is that they're supposed to do when they're in the room. What questions do you have before I move on? Either the 6 guiding principles or anything I've talked to before I move on to a little bit more about foundation. This was about, if you remember, we're going back, we're looking at the bigger picture and the now what, and how can we go back and see what we did over the last few years and what can we do better. And part of that is building that foundation, right? We talked a little bit about instructional design, delivery best practices, and at the beginning, adaptable templates and standards. Now, for your virtual and hybrid classes, are you using the slides and giving them a participant guide? I'm a huge advocate of participant guides, personally. Now, they don't have to be verbatim, the participant guides. I think they're really important, especially in a virtual, and you can send them virtually. In the organization that I'm working in now, our participant guides are all fillable PDFs. So if people don't want to print them out, they could at least have them up and filling them in. I like participant guides more as workbooks. And if nothing else, it keeps everybody honest. So in the participant guides, and I'm sorry, I don't even think I have one in my presentation today, but in my participant guides, I always say, like, this is the activity, this is the next activity. Here are the instructions. So those instructions that I show on the screen and I verbally say, they also have them in their participant guide. So when I put them into the breakout rooms, there's less storming and norming. Or if they're like, what did she just say? What were we doing here? What was that question? There it is in their participant guide. And they can take some nice notes as well. So I think they're really important to have participant guides. And anybody else who wants to chime in or, counter, you can as well. I'm up for debate. I'm up for debate. Okay, let's keep an eye on time here. I think I have till 20 after, is that right? Okay, so the other part of the foundation, yeah, Yeah, hard to listen and take notes. So give them the text and let them listen. I say that, people ask me that. I run a lot of webinars like I used to do for TOC. I still run a lot of webinars for different organizations. And I'll always say you're going to offer a handout, and some of them will offer their PowerPoint deck or a version of it. And you can pro and con whether that's a good idea or not. It sort of depends on your PowerPoint deck. Um, but if they're doing that, I always like to tell the participants, say, hey, we're giving you a copy of these slides, and hey, we're giving you a handout, and hey, you're gonna have a recording. So guess what? I want you to just sit back and enjoy and listen. And don't feel like you have to write every little thing down, because we're going to give you every little thing afterwards, right? Yeah, listen and participate. Exactly. Okay, the other part of foundation is um, when we're going to step back and look at everything again. Can we make our workflows a little bit better? Can we make our performance support tools a little bit better? And what technology enhancements? So we already talked a little bit about technology. I just want to show you a few examples here. So when we're building the design for Online Now, as we're looking at new blends and hybrid blends, you'll need to look at your programming through the lens of an architect. You are an architect. You are a learning experience architect. Even the best sandcastles, do you remember that really extreme looking sandcastle at the beginning? Needs planning. Even the most basic castles need planning. Which buckets are we going to use? What things are we going to adorn our sandcastles with? So this here, I always like to talk about when you are architecting, you have to think about the 3 T's, and you have to think about all these different elements of, it could just be one session, or it could be a hybrid or a blend. But sometimes this is where we fall down. And again, when we're talking about what's next is go back and look at your programs. Look at the architect of your programs. When you're looking at pre and between sessions, what are you having them do? When are they doing it? Who's in charge? How are they doing it? Looking at the 3 T's across all this. So again, what technology are you using? Are you using something like Mural? Are you having them, listen to a recording? Where is that recording posted? In an LMS, somewhere else, on SharePoint? Um, what's the timing of it? Do they do it a week before? Do they have to do it in between live sessions? How often are you doing live sessions? How long are they going to be? How many are you going to have? Are you going to record these? And if you do record them, where are you going to post them? Are there going to be assessments? Are the assessments in the sessions themselves? Are they up on the LMS? Are they going to be pushed through an email? What is the assessment going to be? How are they going to be delivered? What's that follow-up going to look like? This is where we fall down, I think, a lot, just in the learning industry in general, is that follow-up, right? There's all sorts of percentages now. They're changing the percentages of how much we learn versus, how much we don't learn. You've heard the 70-30 for many, many years. But this goes back to when I was talking about making little micro learnings and boosters. What booster activities can you follow up with after you do these live sessions so that learning continues? So maybe it's a reiteration of something that you learned. Maybe it's something new to supplement it, to get you thinking. Maybe it's an opportunity to say, and I love this idea, and I know it's not ideal, but I love the idea of, and I think it was Will Thalhammer who came up with it many, many years ago. This is also around assessments, but this is that kind of Kirkpatrick level 3 behavioral change, and level 4. What can you do a couple weeks, 30 days, 60 days after the learning event, so that they can come back and they've had time to process what they've learned, and then they can come and ask more questions of a subject matter expert. And then any post-course assignments. So along all this, again, think of, put your architect brain on. What's the technology you're going to use? What's the timing of all of these? And who is doing all of these things? You might look at developing some preparation checklists. By the way, if you email me after this session, I'm always happy to share any tools that I have, this included. This seems to be a popular one of preparation checklists. How are you supporting your presenter, your participants? What do you need from a technology perspective, both pre-session and in session? What do you need to consider from a content perspective as well? And on top of all of that, what are your plan Bs, especially with hybrid, right? What are your alternative solutions when things are not going as planned? Again, we want to, I mean, we're all in this industry. We've all been in it, many of us, very, very long time. And we try everything in our power not to cancel a class, right? We try everything in our power not to cancel a class. So if you go back and look at your preparation checklists and they don't have plan Bs for everything, I highly encourage you to do that. Because it can go wrong, it is going to go wrong. And the more plan Bs, or even plan Cs, and even plan Ds that you have, more likely the show will always go on. You'll feel less stressed and your participants will be none the wiser that things are going on. I'll be happy to give you my contact information at the end if you would like this preparation checklist. And then if you haven't documented your process, this is just an example for like a one-off event, and people see this and they're like, oh my God, that's a lot of people. Oh my goodness, a lot of people. Down at the bottom are roles, right? You have the presenter, facilitator, you might have tech support, logistics, a program manager, host. Each role does not have to be an individual person. I've worked in organizations where I'm the coach, the tech support, the logistics person, and the host in the live event, right? I'm one person doing 4 different roles. And then if you're going to document, and again, I'm happy to share this with you too if you've never documented. I love this document because I've had clients come to me and, you know, they do that, can't we just, remember that at the beginning, can't we just, and I will show them this and I'll say, no, we can't just. Look at all the steps that are involved for one event and look at all the roles that are associated. Do you have the people that are going to do this? Do you know who's going to do this? What technology? Remember the 3 T's for each one of these squares. And that will help you with your client or your colleague or whoever you're trying to convince that you can't just get that beautiful sandcastle. Yes, you wear many hats. You can as well. All right. And then the last thing I want to talk about is our poor facilitators. They get so overlooked. So I worked at Booz Allen Hamilton for 10 years, and I was part of the group that did I was privileged to be a part of the group that had the award-winning, at the time, award-winning e-learning deployment in the early 2000s. We did, you know, virtual, I don't even think it's a virtual platform anymore. It's Saba, Centra Saba. And we were so excited of us being me and a few other handful of people that we were, you know, launching this. Like, how exciting, online training, da 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 da. We built all this wonderful training. And the people that we totally overlooked that were not excited were the facilitators. Because at the time they're like, oh, we're not gonna have a job anymore. Like, what does that mean for me? I don't know how to facilitate online. I don't know this technology, right? Maybe during the pandemic or at the beginning of the pandemic, you had a lot of resistance and you had to say, too bad, so sad. Like, this is the reality. You got to do it. And likely it didn't go really well, you know, because they were never properly upskilled to facilitate online. So who can you know, now again, we're building that foundation. Can you go back and look at upskilling re-upskilling your facilitators? You know, who needs some help? What do they need? Ask them how they're feeling about facilitating online. Get their input. What do they need so they feel more successful? Especially if you're going to think about adding more technology and they're like, oh my gosh, I just now finally got comfortable in Zoom and now you want me to use Mural? Like, that's the resistance I hear in my organization. So some of us are so excited about using new tools, but then I get the pushback from the facilitators on the front lines, like, no thanks. This is, and again, I'm happy to send this to you. This is just a snapshot, a part of a facilitation certification for online learning. You might consider putting something like this together, or putting your facilitators through some sort of internal certification. And even if it's not a formal certification, something like this to say, hey, these are the expectations of you, and everything from how you're setting up your virtual classroom to how you're preparing your students. And in this spreadsheet that I have a description. You can rank them for how they're adapting, what they need to develop. This came from a class where the whole theme was being a virtual online rock star. So we have the rock star column as well. So again, this is an opportunity to kind of step back, look at the bigger picture, and figure out, how do you need to fill your buckets now, right? Do you need to rethink and reinvent, or you need to reskill, upskill? Where are you in your organization as far as what's next for you and your virtual delivery? I'm going to stop there. That is the end for me. I will take any questions. What I hope for you is that your sandcastles will look like this moving forward. Take pictures and send to me. What questions, comments? While you're thinking about that, I'm going to go back to Chris's question here about Mural. I was just curious about whether or not you needed to, or could, if you wanted to, assign people to groups the way you might need to in Adobe Connect, trying to gauge amount of setup required. Yeah, okay, so I gave you an answer, yeah. You would like to have, yeah, let me put my email for you. So on the screen is my my QR code to LinkedIn, but I will give you my email in chat. Email me and I'm happy to send you. So it's melissa.chambersdesign@gmail.com. I'm happy to send you. I have so much stuff. I'll send you whatever you want. If I have it, I'll send it to you. I encourage you to go out, try Mural. It's really fun too. It's really fun. I love Mural and Miro. So it's Mural. Let me type it up for you. Mural is one of them. And the other one is Miro. Miro is just a little more robust, and I think might cost a little bit. Mural you can do for free to an extent.
Always love the free resources.
There are a lot of them out there. And you might go look at new virtual classrooms too. There's some really, I saw a new one. Oh, the name of it just went out of my head, at DevLearn. I was really impressed with. Oh, thanks, Jerry. It's good to see you, Jerry. I guess I could come back on webcam here.
Yes, come on back. Thank you so much, Mel. This was really informative. Completely appreciate it. And yes, I was remiss to not give everyone your proper credentials, but you have obviously shown us exactly, without having to read, you've shown us your expertise, and we greatly appreciate you coming on and speaking to us. And I'm so excited that we have several individuals on from FGDLA as well. So this was a nice collaborative partnership for us to be able to share. And you can see all my hats in the background. I have my hats that I wear. So I know us as training professionals now, we really have to, gather a bunch of different skills and really learn from each other and make sure that we are presenting to our customers in the best format that we can. I do want to do just a couple of quick finalizing announcements. Let me see if I can share here real quick. All
I'll
right.
stop sharing for you. There you go.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, I think I can get this going. Speaking of upskilling, I think I need to polish some of my Zoom skills. Carla, maybe I need to speak with Ross on how to do that there. So I just wanted to reiterate that this is one of the 3 events, and I must have some animation on here that I haven't taken off. One of 3 events. So our second one will be a shot a day, keeps the help desk away. And that will be with Kelly Barrett on the January 24th. And that is another Zoom webinar. And I believe, goodness sakes, I can't get it to stop doing that. I believe Lynera is going to put that link in there. The second one is for interactive workshops. This is again in person. I know this is really kind of a misnomer that we're doing intentional virtual learning and that we're offering an in-person webinar or in-person workshop. But basically that this has been our niche, is coming together in person for a Training Officers Consortium. And we are doing it as a half day because we know that a lot of people are working from home, teleworking more often than not. And as Chris Kaplan told me the other day, he's like, it's like ATM fees. If I'm going to go to an ATM, I don't want to take out $20 and pay a $3 fee. So we're giving you a half-day workshop, so you're not coming in for just an hour-long lunch. So we're going to have 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. and we'll have it very interactive. Sponsored by Diamond Information Systems, both of these upcoming events. And then my screen keeps going back and forth, so you guys just, get like this disco effect. But the Annual Institute, if you're interested in the Annual Institute, Lynera, if you're still online, if you will throw the Annual Institute and the event link in the online, we would love to see you there. We have a very hearty slate of presenters for our Annual Institute. And again, we'll have in person in Ocean City, lodging and meals included for the low price of $12.25. And then our virtual option will be available. We are still looking at the costing for our virtual option, but we will have that available as well. So once again, thank you to Diamond Information Systems for sponsoring this event series. And thank you to the Graduate School for being a program year sponsor, as well as a title sponsor for our Annual Institute. Appreciate everyone joining us today, and thank you, and have a very wonderful afternoon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks for having me. Go build those sandcastles.
Thanks, Mel.
Bye.
Shannon, I figured I'd catch you while I knew that you were briefly free.